afternoon. I call this meeting of the Michigan Public Service Commission to order on July 2nd, 2019 at 1:32 p.m. Welcome. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Chairman Talberg.
Present.
Commissioner Sari.
Present.
Commissioner Scripps.
Present.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. First up, we have item number 1, approval of agenda. If there's a motion.
Madam Chair, I move approval of the agenda for today's commission meeting. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The agenda is approved. Next up, is there a motion to approve the meeting minutes of the regular commission meeting of June 7th, 2019?
Madam Chair, I move approval of the minutes of the regular commission meeting on July 7th, 2019. June 7th, 2019. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The meeting minutes of June 7th, 2019 are approved. Item number 3, approval of orders on the consent agenda. Today, the commission is assisted by Attorney Lisa Gold and staff.
Good afternoon. Today's consent agenda consists of 6 communication matters, 7 electric matters, 2 gas matters, and 1 video cable matter that are listed on item 3 of today's agenda. The proposed orders for each of these matters have been thoroughly vetted by the Commission's technical and legal staffs and are ready for your approval.
Madam Chair, I move approval of all orders listed on today's consent agenda. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye. The orders are approved.
Item 4A1 is case numbers U17349 and U17569, which involve an amended joint application by Sprint Spectrum LP and AT&T Michigan requesting approval of a First Amendment to the parties' interconnection agreement approved in the April 15, 2014 order in these cases. The order before you approves the First Amendment.
Madam Chair, I move approval of orders U17349 and U17569. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye. The orders are approved, or the order is approved.
Item 4B1 is case number U20162, which involves an application filed by DTE Electric Company for authority to increase its rates for the sale and distribution of electric energy. The order before you denies the petitions for rehearing filed by DTE Electric Company and the residential customer group.
I move approval of the order in docket number U20162.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Abstentions?
Aye.
The order is approved.
Item 4B2 is case number U20496, which involves an application by Consumers Energy Company requesting ex parte approval of a power purchase agreement amendment. The order before you approves the application.
Madam Chair, I move approval of order U20496. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The order is approved.
Item 4B3 is case number U20512, which involves an application filed by DTE Electric Company requesting a waiver from provisions of the Code of Conduct for the transfer of certain power purchase agreements. The order before you approves the application.
Madam Chair, I move approval of order U20512. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The order is approved.
Item 4C1 is case number U20463, which involves an investigation of a fire at Consumers Energy Company's Ray compressor station. Staff member Dave Chisla is here to describe this order.
Good afternoon, Chairman, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of docket 20463. As you are aware, on January 30th, 2019 at approximately 10:30 a.m., Consumers Energy experienced a fire at their Ray compressor station in Macomb County in the middle of a severe weather event where the company could ill afford to have this facility removed from service. The Ray compressor station and storage field during peak winter periods is responsible for a significant portion of Consumers Energy natural gas throughput. The loss of the Ray facilities required consumers to obtain additional gas supplies, curtail commercial and industrial loads, including electric generation, and request residential customers to conserve natural gas. The plea for conservation came from the governor and an emergency alert from the Michigan State Police. The aligning of the unprecedented weather event with the shortage of gas supply on consumers' system created an environment that could have been deadly for a significant number of Michigan residents. and it is to this end that the order before you is directing consumers and staff to continue its investigation into the events and the company's response to this incident. The significance of this event prompted the opening of this docket on February 7th, with an order requiring consumers to file a report that addressed issues related to the cause of the incident and the Consumers Energy's response to the incident. Consumers timely filed its report on April 5th. Staff was required to file a response to Consumers' report, which was done on May 8th. Comments from 2 other parties were also received. Consumers responded to staff's and other comments on May 30th. The order before you requires that, in future cases, consumer is to provide testimony and exhibits detailing costs associated with the incident. Consumers is to conduct a system-wide study of compressor station blowdowns. Consumers is to conduct an evaluation of its incident command system and associated procedures. Consumers is to provide reports regarding the Ray facility repairs, injection schedule, and capacity for the 2019-2020 heating season. And staff files its root cause analysis report by January 31st, 2020. The severe consequences of this emergency were narrowly averted through the joint sacrifice of many Michigan residents. As such, it would be remiss if we did not take this opportunity to review and determine if the company's actions were appropriate, timely, and in the best interest of all the customers that it is responsible to serve. Thank you for your time and consideration in this matter.
Thank you, and thank you for the staff's work on this investigation. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I move approval of order U-20463.
Second.
Commissioner Sari.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Dave, and to your staff also. The extensive review and discussion of the Ray compressor station gas release and fire required the Commission to examine actions and procedures that support natural gas safety. This report by Commission staff helps answer many of the concerns with the Ray incident, from examining the root cause analysis to operational safety and ultimately corrective action that we expect will prevent a recurrence at Ray or any other natural gas compressor station in Michigan. Equally important, it provided valuable insight into emergency communications and the responsibility to inform the public about how safety was of paramount importance and there would be no compromise to any Michiganders' health and well-being. This accident was uncharacteristically unpredictable, and the events of the ensuing 30 hours after the fire were unscripted and unrehearsed. Corrective actions were undertaken in a cooperative manner with the foremost obligation to manage the uncertainty created by weather and customer reaction. No one showed up for work on the morning of January 30th with the insight that an accident would occur or how it could be managed. The Commission's gas safety staff already had a full book of work to accomplish that day, but were immediately responsive to a very important reprioritization into emergency response status. No homeowner started the day concerned that an impending shortage of natural gas could result in a cold home. No business started the day with plans to curtail or shut down gas-fired processing equipment. A max gen alert in the MISO region meant that conditions were consistent with the need for all available power to be put into the grid, but it turned out being too cold for some wind turbines to generate, and the curtailment of natural gas would limit that resource for electric generation. After the all clear was given and normal operations would follow, the sequence of events in those 30 hours started to be carefully scrutinized by Commission staff, the utility, public safety, and policy leaders to determine future actions to prevent a recurrence of the gas release and fire. It was a learning experience on how to best respond to future unplanned emergencies. The order today is part of the Commission's continued efforts to compile a detailed and exhaustive analysis of the Ray event. It was assembled without prejudice or favor and requires the staff to complete its extensive research into all aspects of the accident. The Commission is still working on compiling detailed input from consumers, other gas utilities in Michigan, public safety officials, impacted businesses, local residents, and others impacted by the accident. These efforts will create a learning document from the 30 hours at Ray and will be important as we collectively focus our efforts to improve natural gas safety in Michigan. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The order's approved.
Item 4C2 is case number U20464, which involves a matter on the Commission's own motion to issue a report on the state's supply, engineering, and deliverability of natural gas, electricity, and propane, and contingency planning, as requested by the Governor. Staff member Pat Poley is here to describe this order.
Good afternoon, Chair Talberg and Commissioners Sari and Scripps. Thank you for the opportunity to provide an overview of the initial statewide energy assessment. The C, as we call it, was ordered in docket U20464 in response to the cold weather event in January 2019 and the concurrent energy emergencies. I will describe the scope, the process, initial findings, recommendations, and next steps for the C. Before I begin, though, I must first acknowledge the small army of MPSC staff that helped with this project. Without the efforts of nearly 40 colleagues, the completion of this assessment in the time frame provided would have been impossible. Particularly, I want to give a shout out to the sector leads, Kevin Spence for natural gas, Taylor Becker for electricity, Ethan Kramer on propane, Brian Sheldon covering cyber and physical security, Alex Marisi on emergency management, and the project coordinator, Lynn Beck. In January 2019, as we all know, a combination of extreme weather, referred to as the Polar Vortex 19, and emergency events challenged the natural gas and electric systems in Michigan. It was the perfect storm of an event. Temperatures below 25 degrees Fahrenheit on the electric side, unexpected generator outages throughout the region due to the cold caused the regional electric transmission grid operator to order all generators in the 15-state region to generate electricity at maximum capacity. On the natural gas side, record demand for heating coupled with the loss of the Ray compressor station impacted the ability to access and deliver natural gas stored underground. Two largest utilities issued public appeals for conservation, and the State Emergency Operations Center was activated, and an emergency text message issued from the Michigan State Police. After the event, Governor Whitmer requested that the MPSC review the state's energy supply and preparedness for emergency situations, requesting an initial statewide energy assessment report from the Commission by July 1st with a final report to follow in September. The Governor asked the Commission to specifically review the bulleted items. The idea was to assess the adequacy of the infrastructure from a reliability and resilience standpoint, to identify vulnerabilities, and to make recommendations to reduce risk. The team investigated 6 separate sectors: natural gas, electricity, propane, cyber security, physical security, and emergency management. For the report, cybersecurity and physical security were merged into one sector. To facilitate the communication and reach as many stakeholders as possible, we created a dedicated web page and listserv. We offered a draft outline soliciting feedback and provided a final report outline on March 5th. We had 3 months to gather data, and so to streamline the process, sector-specific questionnaires were created and input solicited from anyone who cared to comment. Between March 5th and May 1st, over 40 stakeholder meetings, interviews, calls, site visits were conducted, and over 40 stakeholders participated in one form or another. Now we have several slides describing the energy landscape today for electric, natural gas, and propane. So over the last 10 years, Michigan's electric energy mix has rapidly evolved from traditional baseload generation, heavily reliant on coal, to more intermittent resources such as renewable energy, demand response, energy waste reduction, and energy storage. And while the majority of the country is moving away from coal and fundamentally changing the energy mix prevalent for decades, Michigan utilities are retiring a more substantial amount of coal-fired generation than our Midwest neighbors, not only for economic reasons, but in large part to fulfill corporate clean energy goals. Michigan is uniquely situated with natural gas attributes. With over 600 billion cubic feet of underground natural storage capacity, Michigan is more than any other state. Our utilities own just under 300 BCF of that storage. And to give some context for those numbers, our largest natural gas utility has a peak demand on the coldest day of the year of about 3.5 BCF. And even though we are a peninsular state, we have interconnections with multiple interstate pipelines providing access to diverse supplies from other producing regions. The vast majority of Michiganders use natural gas for home heating. And when this combined with the increasing reliance on natural gas for a generation fuel source, if there is an energy emergency impacting both sectors, there can be a conflict between natural gas needed to keep homes heated and the natural gas needed to keep the lights on. Propane. Michigan ranks first in the nation for residential propane usage by volume. Michigan has 2 fractionators and 1 crude oil refinery that help to meet the propane needs of Michigan residents. And given Michigan's unique geology, propane can be stored underground. Michigan has access to diverse supply markets, including Western Canada, the Midwest, and Eastern Canada. On the previous slide, we showed that only 8% of residents use propane for home heating. However, 18% of the UP residents and nearly a quarter of the northern lower Michigan residents rely on this fuel to heat their homes. The next several slides highlight some of the factors driving change, creating what is the new normal. An increase in climate events, climate extreme events. We have data from the past 60 years for the Midwest showing an observed increase in severe weather, whether it be droughts or floods, abnormally cold or abnormally hot temperatures, and severe storms. And in addition, an increase in the strength of average peak wind gusts. In this particular graph, we show that between 1960 and 2020, there is an average increase in extreme weather events of 30%. Aging infrastructure. This impacts electric and gas assets. On the electric side, this chart shows the age of our electric generation. We have a lot of coal that was put in place in the 50s through the 70s. In the 70s, a lot of nuclear was built. In the 90s was natural gas mostly, and is now a common replacement for retiring coal units. We have a diverse generation supply. However, the overall system is aging, and significant investment is required to update and upgrade these systems. This is the same on the distribution and transmission side. A lot of the distribution assets were built in the 1940s to the 70s, and the assets are reaching an age and condition where they will need to be replaced in the coming years for safety and reliability. For natural gas, we have over 11,000 miles of natural gas pipeline, both mains and service lines, that are considered high risk. And when you have infrastructure failure on natural gas pipelines, you run the risk of explosions which may cause a devastating loss of life and property. Even though this chart shows that thousands of leaks are repaired each year, there are others that replace them. Utilities are working on replacing this aged infrastructure. Cyber and physical security attacks. Energy infrastructure is at the crosshairs of various threats becoming more common around the world. And if you've ever seen one of these displays showing real-time IT attacks, it reminds you of a 4th of July fireworks display, but one that lasts 24/7, 365 days a year. Cyber attacks on critical infrastructure continue to increase in number and sophistication. So this was a key deliverable of the governor's request, and that is, what is the assessment of the adequacy of Michigan's energy systems to reliably supply and deliver energy? The conclusion: the systems are adequate to meet customer needs. The Polar Vortex 19 was a perfect example that even with all the overlapping emergencies, even when that perfect storm hit, the lights stayed on and the home stayed heated. That being said, there are always opportunities for improvement, and particularly when considering that emergency events have the potential to impact the economy and the well-being of residents. So this is an area for continued vigilance. This slide highlights some of the generalized concerns for each sector. We were careful not to provide a roadmap to system vulnerabilities. There are some shared themes such as aging infrastructure, system limitations, extreme weather, gas-electric interdependence, and worker shortages. The C makes both recommendations and observations. Recommendations were distinguished as those that fall within the Commission's jurisdiction. Observations fall outside the Commission's jurisdiction but may be considered as opportunities for discussions with stakeholders in other venues. There were 36 recommendations and 14 observations in total. I want to just briefly cover the high-level recommendations provided by the Commission. Risk-based integrated natural gas planning. Recommend that natural gas distribution utilities develop long-term plans for maintenance and infrastructure covering all assets, storage, distribution, and transmission based upon a probabilistic risk assessment to prioritize investments that will assure safe, reliable, and resilient operations. The plan should consider diversification, redundancies, and interconnections as well as worst-case scenarios. Integrated electricity system planning. Recommend that Michigan electric utilities and electric transmission owners better integrate the planning processes for electric generation, distribution, and transmission to optimize system reliability improvements and ensure a holistic review of alternatives. Valuing resource diversity and resiliency. Recommend that the value of diversity in power supplies be quantified as part of future integrated resource plans filed by electric utilities, and that the value of resiliency be considered in future electric infrastructure planning and investment decisions related to energy supply and delivery, including generation sources, transmission and distribution upgrades, and grid modernization technologies. Addressing gas-electric interdependencies. Recommend that natural gas distribution utilities identify revisions to gas curtailment procedures to prioritize home heating over electricity generation, and to develop criteria in coordination with the Governor's Office, state police, and other stakeholders to prioritize natural gas and electricity service under declared energy emergencies affecting both industries. Demand response improvements. Recommend electric utilities improve demand response program design, communication protocols, and testing to ensure participating customers are capable and willing to reduce their usage when called upon for electric system reliability. And that natural gas distribution utilities develop DR programs as an alternative to broad emergency appeals. Emergency drills. We recommend that utilities expand upon traditional drills to include those that also focus on curtailment and demand response procedures rather than just outage management and restoration. The Commission recommends that state agencies participate in the emergency drills with utilities and that state agencies receive regular emergency response training. Cybersecurity standards for natural gas distribution utilities. Recommend that the promulgation of rules for cybersecurity and incident reporting for natural gas utilities be based upon industry standards. Propane contingency planning. Recommend a formal contingency plan for the continued supply and deliverability of propane or other energy alternatives for Michigan residents in the event of a loss of current supply options. The Commission is, of course, participating in the Governor's UP Energy Task Force to identify alternatives to energy sources used in the Upper Peninsula, including propane. Next steps. In the order before you, the Commission provides an opportunity for public comment through August 9th to the U20464 docket. There will also be 2 Commission meetings before the public comment period ends where individuals may wish to provide oral comments during the public comment period at the end of the Commission meetings. And these 2 dates are identified, these 2 Commission meeting dates are identified in this slide, July 18th and August 8th. As well as directions for how to supply written comments. Basically, comments should reference the statewide energy assessment and the docket 20464. Thank you.
Thank you. If you want to go ahead and move.
Madam Chair, move approval of order U20464.
Second.
And before we go for a vote, I just want to acknowledge the leadership and commitment that Pat Poley and her team had on this major project. It was a significant undertaking under a very compressed time frame. You guys did an excellent job, excellent presentation, and other materials to help disseminate this to other state agencies, work with the governor's office and stakeholders. It really was kind of the best at what we do here, and bringing a lot of institutional knowledge and data and hard work and thoughtfulness to pull this together and identify areas to improve, and use this opportunity from the polar vortex to continually improve our energy systems. I want to stress, you mentioned some of the team members that participated and led different aspects of this report development. It was a very large team, many individuals here at the commission involved with this, and had a lot of other activities and responsibilities as part of their day jobs as well. And so I know this was a major undertaking that took weekends and other hours from many of the team members, and just want to acknowledge their contributions, your contributions and leadership to bring this forward. I also just want to acknowledge the governor's leadership during this event on January 30th and 31st, as well as the proactive approach to direct us to undertake this study. It's such an opportunity to step back as we see the world changing around us, and our power supplies and other factors that could address energy security, and making sure that we're identifying ways to mitigate risk and ensure reliable supplies of energy to Michigan residents. So thank you. We look forward to the stakeholder input. There's several opportunities, and can continue to refine this before submitting a final report in September. So thank you. With that, all those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye. The order is approved. Thank you. All right, next up we have item number D, public comments. I have several cards here, and we'll go in the order received. Just in terms of some of the mechanics of that, we will, I'll invite speakers to come up one at a time. And also, so please wait to be identified before speaking. When it's your time to speak, you can come to the desk here where Mr. Chesla is sitting before the microphone, and be seated at the table to address the commission. And if you haven't submitted a card, just Lisa, if you could raise your hand, come see Lisa Felice here, and she can get one filled out for you so you can get in the queue to speak. And when you come to the desk, please identify yourself, your name and your address. You don't need to give your specific address, but where you're from. We will be trying to observe a 3-minute time limit for your comments today. We do have some materials that were submitted to us in writing, so that's also helpful, that maybe will augment the public comments given verbally. Our executive secretary will do a warning about 30 seconds out, just with a wave of the hand to help, so you could kind of try to wrap up your comments at that point. We're just trying to make sure we can have time for everyone to address the commission. Also, just a note, please understand the purpose of this is to hear from the public. The commission won't be answering questions at this time. And with that, I have Mr. Hazard, Donald Hazard first. And I think, are you going to stay from there, Mr. Hazard? Okay. Go ahead.
Donald Hazard, Ypsilanti Township, Michigan. As you know, we're very critical of DTE in their operations. However, they have replaced our gas meter, checked to make sure we got the opt-out information on it, painted it, and actually had somebody come by and check to make sure the right meter was installed and read it. So we will get on them when it's necessary. We will also praise them. And in this case, we believe they did an excellent job. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. One note that this reminds me of, this is videotaped and available both on live stream and recorded on YouTube. So if there's, for some reason, you don't want to be on camera, we can make accommodations to bring the microphone to speak at a different location and still have your comments shared as part of the meeting. And then next up, we have two individuals I think are coming up together. Christine Kakanowski and Paul Kakanowski. And please help me with your name if I've butchered it. Welcome. Welcome.
Christina Kazanowski, you did a very good
Okay.
job. And then my son, Paul.
Welcome.
We live approximately 1,500 feet from the vent stack at Consumers Energy that was on fire. We are in Ray Township. They are in Armada Township. We also live approximately 200 feet from the proposed Blue Water compressor station. In the Ray compressor station fire, my house was one that sustained some mild damage. Our front window was blown in. And the structural engineer that Consumers was so kind to supply did find a crack joist. Consumers gave us no issues about repairs, and for that we are very grateful. I have lived there for 19 years. They have been a neighbor of mine. We've had issues with them. They have always been receptive to talking with us, to trying to resolve the issues, and we are very, very grateful for that. When we were notified that Blue Water was proposing their station about 2,000 feet south of us, Blue Water said, "We're coming in, like it or not, this is how it is. You can't do anything about it, and we really have nothing to say to you, but we are having an open house," so there is our discussion. In 2014, at approximately 3 miles south of us, there was an explosion in, the pictures are there in the middle. We felt that at our house. We thought someone drove into our house. We ran outside to see what happened. Our neighbors were running outside to see what happened. Within the next year, we pumped our septic tank out. We do it about every year and a half. There was a crack in the main wall of our septic tank that was not there before that explosion by Blue Water. A little bit of research, and I discovered that in 2011, they also had a serious issue out at Columbus. They have a track record of building a plant, and 5 to 6 years, there is some sort of an incident. We are very concerned about Blue Water coming in. We know what Consumers is like. I'm sorry. We have dealt with Consumers. If it was Consumers coming in behind us, we would not have an issue with it. We have an issue with Blue Water. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then
When Consumers blew up, I was standing by our front window, and I ran, and I almost fell from the shock. Very dangerous.
well, and you can.
And when Blue Water blew up, I was in my room, and so was my brother, and we felt something, and it was not like a small earthquake. It was huge, and I could feel it a lot, and I ran outside, and I could hear the roar from the explosion.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you for sharing that. Okay, next up we have Pat Paholski. Welcome.
Afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I want to thank you for listening to us. My talk is very short, and I appreciate your attention. I have lived in my 100-year-old farmhouse since 1970, and we're about 2,000 feet away from the proposed Blue Water facility. The house is where my husband and I reared our 3 children, and I hope to die there from natural causes. We know we can't stop this project from going ahead, but I just want to appeal to you to make it safer and less intrusive. Our home values have dropped by up to 30%. Another concern is what will happen to our water tables when they break ground on this massive structure. We just put in a new well less than 2 years ago, and we all know that water is life. So please, please help us to live without worrying about a company with a spotty safety record. I'm just asking you to put some brakes on this behemoth. Thank you.
All right, next up, we have Devin Slanik, or Slanik? Afternoon.
I too am a Ray Township resident. We've lived on Omo Road for 47 years. And our family's main concern is the lack of safety and the lack of interest in even listening to the residents by Blue Water Gas Storage. They hosted an open house and were quite honestly very dismissive of any concerns or questions we had posed to them. And then after discovering, and we had asked questions as well about their history and of explosions, and they basically had dismissed them. And I guess I know that this storage facility or this compressor facility will not be servicing anyone in the state of Michigan, merely making natural gas less expensive for those who live in Wisconsin. So if indeed you have any influence as to them building it as safely as possible, there are ways of making it extremely safe, though they seemed, when we asked about safety, it was the economics in their pro-profit company rather than all of us residents living in the area. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And did I get your last name correct before
I'm sorry.
I said, did I get your last name?
Slanik?
Slanik, okay.
Yes.
All right, next up we have Mike Slanik. I didn't want to do it twice. Welcome.
All right. Hi, how are you? My concerns are basically the same as my wife's, except for the fact is we've lived there for 47 years, and we've had discussions over the years with Consumers Energy. They're always there. They talk to you. Anything happens, you work it out. In their track record, that's about the first time that we've lived out there that's happened. Now, Blue Water, they got a perfect track record. It's about every 4 years things blow up. So somebody's got to take into consideration the level of safety, because it's right here in front of us. If they have to spend money, it really doesn't bother me, because it benefits nobody in the state of Michigan. And that's about all I've got to say. It's the safety aspect of it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up we have Chris Holzbecki, Senior. Did I get that? Okay. Holzbeck, okay.
Chris Holzbeck, live at 68120 Omo Road in Lennox Township. Apologize to Commissioner Sari. This is probably pretty repetitive for him, as we were here a couple months ago. I want to point out, I'm about a mile away from the Consumers accident. I had employees working in my barn and my family in my house at the time. They both called me. The employees thought a tractor drove through the barn. My wife thought the house was being bombed. This is more than a mile away. The Blue Water project is less than 400 to 500 feet away from where my daughter is proposing building a house. If you know 400 or 500 feet, or if you have children or grandchildren, you can appreciate if we were standing outside with the Consumers energy explosion, we probably wouldn't be here today talking about it. I'm a developer builder. We did our research when we bought the property. Everything around us is zoned residential. This is an industrial explosive facility that wouldn't be allowed in the harshest of areas under normal circumstances. We understand it's a federal issue and not a state issue, but we're hoping that we can get to somebody from the state to help us out federally because we are unable to reach those people. We have wrote several letters. We have talked to the congressmen, the senators, tried to reach the governor with a little help, but not enough to feel safe in our community. This facility that Blue Water is proposing, basically in my front yard, I'm probably the closest resident because the neighbor already has moved out once he found out that this facility is being done, is being built with the least amount of safety that you can build a facility like this. I think it's called a level 1 because it's in a rural area. Bothers me because is my family less important if there were 10 of us across the street, which is what the area was proposed to have. There's about 20 splits alongside me and in my property. They probably aren't going to happen now. But why would Blue Water be able to build this facility with a level 1 safety requirement just because there's only 50 or 100 people that are going to be affected if it blows up compared to 200 or 2,000? Why is one family less important than 20 families? To me, if my grandkids are outside and this explosion happened, like our neighbor's house, it's going to affect a lot of people. There's already people that we heard are death from the last Blue Water explosions. They would be here to speak to you now about their experiences. However, they had to sign non-disclosure statements from Blue Water to get money from Blue Water to fix their facilities. In order to get the money, they had to sign a disclosure that they wouldn't speak about it in the future. So those people would be here today if legally they could be. We thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holzbeck. And I have another Chris Holzbeck.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm Chris Holzbeck Jr. I live in Lenox. I actually bought the piece adjacent to my father. I have blueprints, plans on building a home out there, getting married in February, and plan on having kids and raising them there. As of now, I completely canceled all my plans as of building there for the reason this facility is so low safety. If you look at the FERC application, the standards of safety are the lowest they can build in that area. As you stated earlier, the way of mitigating risk is what we should be looking for. We've talked to Blue Water. I've actually talked to them on the phone with ideas which would help. A berm with larger trees, not having a direct driveway, and they pretty much have blown us off completely, saying, oh, we'll talk to someone higher up, call us back the next day, say, nah, it's not something we're interested in doing. So we just need a liaison between us and Blue Water, us and the federal government to help protect the people that live there and want to live there in the future. You take someone that wants to raise a family in the country where it's supposed to be safe, quiet. It's not going to be very safe, definitely not going to be quiet with a pump station at 60 decibels. It's like us sitting here having a conversation right now, 24 hours a day. So I appreciate your time and look forward to anything you guys can do to help.
Thank you. And Frank Viviano.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm a resident of Macomb Township, and I've been working with this group of neighbors since the project came about in December, at least when they became aware of it. Their concerns, just to circle back, we were up here in February. We had the opportunity to speak to Commissioner Sari and a number of the staff, and it was a great conversation, and we took his advice, and we went back, and we contacted more people. We spoke to a number of politicians throughout our area. We understand as a group that the sole authority of where this facility is sited and how it's built lies with the FERC. That being said, to get to FERC is nearly impossible for the average citizen. So we talked to Congressman Mitchell, we talked to Senator Lucido. even local supervisor Trombley, all of who submitted letters to FERC on our behalf, along with a group of residents, and you have most of those letters, all expressing concern about the level of safety features that are involved in this project. We consider them significantly inadequate. As you can see, in 2014, that's a very similar facility. It was destroyed. I'm sure they didn't build it with the intent of it blowing up, but they're dealing with a combustible material at very high pressures. Anything goes wrong. A computer failure, a corroded part that they can't see, a flaw in the materials, a small issue can have a catastrophic effect. And because of that, we've been proposing some really common sense and what we consider low budget solutions. Earth, dirt, big piles of it surrounding the facility. We don't want to see anything tragic happen when it can be prevented. And certainly these neighbors have lived through 3 of these explosions in 8 years. And they have a significant interest in keeping their community and their families safe. And we're hoping that the commission will lend its voice to ours with FERC and ask them to review this application with the safety concerns of the residents in mind and encourage, if not insist, that Blue Water build this facility at a higher level of safety features. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Valerie Brader. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm here today also to discuss the Omo Road facility and discuss in specifically some of the safety suggestions that the residents have made and how they respond to not just the incidents you've already heard discussed today, but 2 others that I know are all in your memories, which are the evacuation of Melvindale following a car hitting a natural gas facility and the need to relight basically everything in Lawrence when a car hit a facility. These are both things that have happened in the last 5 years. When you look at the proposal that Blue Water put in, you again have a straight driveway off a road to a fence, exactly the kind of conditions that we saw at both the Melvindale and the Lawrence, and the car plowed right through the fence and hit the facilities, and you saw evacuations in the middle of the night of Melvindale. You saw folks in the UP having no gas service on December the 24th and December the 23rd. You know, these were very serious events. And so one of the things the residents asked is simply that the berms be constructed in a way that you couldn't crash into the fence. You would have to actually turn the car and then turn again. For a $40 million facility, getting some dirt so that the road isn't straight would seem a pretty low cost and reasonable suggestion. The company declined to entertain any discussion of that and said that they wanted to go to FERC and get the permission, and then they'd talk to people. This obviously was not the response that neighbors who are clearly focused on safety were hoping to have. They were looking for a response to actual things that had happened, low-cost solutions that could be done, really common sense. And so I wanted to thank the commission because I know that after folks came the last time, you did speak to WEC and they did take the phone call, but wanted to convey to you that there was not a response, even on very low-cost kind of common sense solutions like these, which, as Mr. Viviano indicated, have been supported by the local government, by the state government. Peter Lucido put in a letter supporting that, and by the federal, Paul Mitchell. But we believe that based on the reception that we've gotten, that we need more voices. And obviously, as you can see, these residents are not folks who just don't appreciate having this. Many of them don't even have natural gas service to their houses. Ironically, they're propane customers. But certainly none of them are getting any benefit. So to ask them to bear a demonstrated risk that they have personally felt, and not to entertain simple solutions like putting a bend in the road and some dirt, I think really points to the need to listen more to residents, and also when we're thinking about where those burdens fall, the willingness of companies to go above and beyond and not simply to buy silence from those who have experienced it so they can't participate in forums like this. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Did she get your name right, Valerie?
Are there Any other comments today? All right, thank you. Appreciate your input today. And that concludes today's meeting. Our next commission meeting is scheduled for July 18th at 1:30 p.m. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting is adjourned.